Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be looking at a fairly recent game. It's been out for a couple of years and there's 2 volumes in the series now with the possibility of more. I very recently came into possession of Undaunted Normandy and I have already secured myself a copy of Undaunted North Africa. I am quite impressed with this game and its system. I'll go into that in a minute, but first I'm just going to open this lovely box. The quality of the packaging certainly is rather impressive and they give you a good impression of what this game's components look like. So let's see what we've got in the box, shall we? Just by way of introduction, Undaunted is a platoon level combat system simulating small-scale battles at the platoon level, and all of the scenarios in the first one follow the adventures of elements of the US 30th Division as they fought their way through Normandy in the first month or so after D-Day. So most of the scenarios focus on that particular period. So inside the box one gets, I can just prise this thing open, hopefully it's a bit easier to crack than the Siegfried line. Urgh, come on! Not by much, I'd say. Whew, I win. So in the box you get just 2 sheets of counters. These are the US ones. These counters here represent elements of your platoon. So each counter, of course, represents several men. I think the snipers represent sniper teams, so even they break away from the individualistic thing you'd normally expect from snipers. The rest of them are control markers, scouted markers, reinforcement tokens. There's a radio tower for one specific scenario. Here we have the German equivalents. As you can see, the artwork is really quite lovely. Looks like watercolor pen and ink, but beautifully executed, very nice. The maps are assembled in this game through the use of modular tiles, so all the information you've got on them is the area's defense rating. This is a very nice, very simple, very clean game. Again, the quality of the artwork is absolutely stupendous. These things are a joy to fit together. They go quite nicely. The production quality is really high. I could show you these bits endlessly. I'm not tired of them yet. Get a number of these 10-sided dice, 2 per player, which is a good number. And lastly, you get your cards. So these are the US ones, and these carry details of the units. So that is the initiative number. You can play a card from your hand at the start of the turn to try and bid for the initiative, and that's how much machine gunners are worth. B designates that he's from the second squad in your platoon, A, B and C. They follow the standard layout of a US platoon in 1944. It's a little gamey. The German platoons are organised in exactly the same way. And there isn't anything to really account for the fact that German platoons were a man or 2 smaller than US platoons in this period. But the way this game is structured, that doesn't make a huge amount of difference. So much for the components. Oh yes, a lovely rule book and a lovely scenario book. These are very high quality publications, beautifully printed, beautifully produced. I have read through the rules. They're very clear, they're very well written, and they are very easily comprehended. I was playing this game 15 minutes after I opened the box, and only once or twice did I have to refer back to the rule book to make sure that I was doing the right thing. So it is a really good introductory level game. The designer actually says in the rulebook that he does not intend this to be a sort of squad leader type advanced war game where the morale of every individual soldier is tracked, how much ammo he's got left is tracked. No, he wanted to paint a broader brush picture of what it was like to be a platoon commander in 1944. And I will get into the specifics in my next video, which will involve a playthrough or at least a couple of turns of one scenario, just to show you how the game works. But briefly, through a very clever system which makes use of these cards to track your resources, not just your available men, in addition to bidding for initiative, playing these cards allows you to perform actions. They basically trigger the unit type on the map. So it gives you that element of command and control. You have certain choices you have to make every turn. There are also fog of war cards, which are a very clever mechanism because they fill up your deck. And depending on what actions you take during the turn, you can either decrease the level of fog of war or you can increase it. So certain actions, like going into a headlong advance to try to seize as many objectives as you can, builds up the fog of war in your deck, which means that if you're not careful, there will be some turns where you can do nothing because you draw your hand for that turn. It's nothing but fog of war cards. Doing things a bit more deliberately means that you get more of these useful fellows and therefore that you have more options. But as I discovered in one of my test games, if you are too deliberate, if you're too cautious, you fall behind. And even if the other fellow is struggling to cope with the fog of war, the degrading situational awareness, he will still be able to outmaneuver you. You can't afford to just sit there in this game unless the scenario specifically states you are fighting a positional battle where you have to defend a certain area. Most of the scenarios in this game are well chosen because they force both sides to execute a certain amount of maneuver in order to make the most of their positions. In fact, the last one I played, it was the scenario that introduced the machine gun rules, as in the heavy machine gun infantry support weapon, by giving the Germans one to help them defend a position that they were ordered to hold. When you looked at the German starting positions, it was good, but they had to deploy forward to cover the area that they were supposed to be defending. Had they not done so, the US forces would have just gone in, seized one of the outlying strong points, and just claimed it for an easy win. So even when you're on the defensive, there's a need for you to be mobile, to be imaginative in what you're doing. And I think that's a great strength of this game. Again, if you're wanting the nitty-gritty and the bookkeeping, this is not probably the game for you. You're better off with something like Squad Leader or the Avalanche Press series that followed on from Panzer Grenadier, or possibly even Upfront, the classic card game. This is much more broad brush in its approach. It is a beautiful game. I'm just going to show you the back of the box again, because that shows you the nice interaction. I mean, they've made it a tiny bit artistic, but you have a map assembled from these tiles. Your entire formation rests on anything from 2 to half a dozen of these circular counters. So a glance at the map gives you instant awareness of your own men, possibly more than you might have enjoyed as a battlefield commander in that period, but the game has to function, so you have to see what you're doing. You've got the cards there which you can play to give your orders. So generic cards like your platoon senior officers can do a lot of interesting things, not just giving orders to specific units, whereas the rifleman card will trigger one of your rifleman counters, and you can either move it, you can attack with it, you can seize control of an area. As you'll see in the next video, it is really quite a simple system. I think it plays beautifully, and I'm hoping that I'll show you how. But in the meantime, I hope you've enjoyed your glance at the components. I will try and show you North Africa as well in my concluding thoughts, because although that is very much the same game reskinned for North Africa, there are new rules, not overwhelming rules, but they've been tweaked slightly to give you a different flavour of the theatre as the British and primarily the Italians experienced it. And the artwork is the same level of gorgeousness, but two new nations and very different terrain to Normandy. But in the next video, I will show you one of the battles from Undaunted Normandy. And I'm just going to say that I'm very much enjoying this offering by the designers. I should have said designers earlier, David Thompson and Trevor Benjamin. It's a good effort. As you'll see, it's quite unlike any game most of us will have encountered. And I hope that you'll consider getting this, because Osprey have started a very good series of games that are rooted in the Second World War and one or two from the Cold War as well. And so far, most of their efforts seem to have been pretty good. I think this series in particular deserves a lot of support. So having said all that, I'll wrap up here. Look forward to making the next video for you, and I hope you find it informative. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.